What's up, you guys? This is Rob from the Gay Guy Plays, and today on the Daily Grind, we're going to be taking a closer look at Atlas's rework. Now, first and foremost, I'm going to hit you guys with a little bit of a build and explain exactly why I chose to build him that way. And I'm going to be completely honest with you, this one needs a little bit of explanation. Then after that, we're going to go ahead and address each of his abilities individually and talk about how they've been touched in the rework. Then finally, at the end, we're going to go into a little bit of gameplay, and I'm going to give them a little bit of feedback as to what I think that we could do better with Atlas, because I'm gonna tell you right now, he's good. He's good. There's just little tiny things that they could work on that would make him even better. Regardless, I'm very excited. Now, as for the build, aside from efficiency and the standard survivability mods, I know it looks a little bit strange and it's missing one of my favorite augments of all time, which of course is Path of Statues. And if I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I thought in my head, I was like, ooh, Path of Statues, it's its time to shine. I'm so excited for it. But after taking this out to mod a lot, I really honestly felt like it did not quite work as well with Path of the Statues. Now, don't get me wrong, maybe for interceptions, mobile defenses, anything where you're kind of trying to hold down a point, I think Path of Statues is going to be absolutely fantastic for that. However, me specifically, after trying out a bunch of different things, and trust me, I tried out a bunch, I actually went ahead and lowered efficiency, put on a bigger power pool, put on more power strength. I was just playing around with everything that I could, and in all honesty, this is the one that absolutely worked the best for me. And the reason that it worked so well is because we put a big focus into efficiency and range, and Petrify is absolutely fucking fantastic now. You can hold down and freeze a bunch of enemies in place and grab your Rubble from that. So not only is it a great CC tool, but it's great for keeping you healed, also putting on a bunch of armor to keep you sustained, and just in general, I think it's gonna be the main focus of his kit, which is very strange to me, because as you guys know, I was all about that landslide life. I was like, let me be invincible, just sliding around all over the place and knocking people in the faces. However, with the new rework in place, I really feel like Petrify is the shining star. So let's go ahead and take a look at that rework kit. Alright, so we're going to start things off by talking about the new mechanic called Rubble. Basically what happens is any enemy killed while they are petrified will actually drop these little rubble pieces. And as you can see here, they will either restore your health or they can actually add on armor. Now, when you kill an enemy with landslide, it'll actually grant you bonus rubble. So you'll, instead of getting 50, you'll actually get 75. So as you pick it up, you'll get more and more rubble. One thing that you'll notice down in the bottom right-hand side of your screen is that rubble actually decays after 3 seconds of picking it up. So you have this big counter, and basically picking up a piece of rubble will stop it from decaying for about 3 seconds, and then it will slowly start to tick down. The counter itself will actually go up to 1,500 and grant you 1,500 points of bonus armor. Now, combined with Atlas's base armor and a little bit of steel fiber magic, what'll actually happen is you'll get an 89% damage reduction, which is very handy when it comes to his survivability. So this is definitely a great way to keep yourself alive during longer missions. Just make sure to not die in the process, because Rubble goes away after all of that. Also keep in mind that Rubble is not affected by power strength of any kind in any way, shape, or form, so you won't get bonus healing or you won't get bonus armor from it. So it's not necessarily a stat that you need to worry about when it comes specifically to your Rubble. Moving along to Landslide, this really hasn't undergone any changes, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. The only thing that they've really added to Landslide is the fact that you deal bonus damage to enemies that are petrified. In addition to that, as I was making note of earlier, the Rubble dropped by killing an enemy with Petrified does provide bonus health and bonus armor. Initially, I thought it was going to be like bonus piece of Rubble, but that's not actually the case. Now, for those of you guys out there who have no clue what Landslide is, number one, it is pure joy in a single ability. But basically what happens is when you use Landslide, you'll actually slide out to an enemy, and while you're in the sliding animation, you actually become invulnerable. So you can see that in the top corner of your screen, that you're not actually going to be taking any damage while you are sliding for that 15 meters. Now, the other thing to note is every single time you use landslide, the chained attack to it, because you can see the little thing in the center of the screen, is when you hit it, you can see that there's a damage multiplier, there's an energy cost reduction, and even a slight range increase to it because the range is really, really small. But basically, you just punch people into submission with the last punch knocking people into outer space, which is fantastic because what tends to happen when you petrify is you'll petrify a group of them, you'll hit like maybe one part of your combo, then the second part, and everything will be shattered into bits because of the fact that they tend to be tightly clustered when they're running down corridors. So it's absolutely fantastic. Still the same as before, but it has a little extra packed punch against petrified enemies. Now, Future Rob here with a little bit of an addendum. I actually forgot to mention two very important things about Landslide. First and foremost, it is affected by your melee combo multiplier, and secondly, it's affected by the mods on your melee weapon. Now, I know you're looking at this setup and you're like, Venka Prime with primed heavy trauma, what is wrong with you, Rob? But trust me, there is a bit of a rhyme and a reason for everything. So first and foremost, we're using the Venka Prime mainly because of the fact that it has its own custom melee combo multiplier, which is 0.75 instead of the standard 0.5 multiplier. So the more and more you hit enemies, you get the 0.75 multiplier, which is of course bigger than the 0.5, so you're dealing more damage. In addition to that, these mods are kind of optimized to work alongside the damage type of a landslide. So that's why you see some weird things like primed heavy trauma. The cool thing about this is the fact that you can customize the damage type to fit the enemy that you're facing. So if you think about it that way, you're getting the multiplier off of the Venka Prime, you're also getting all of the mods on your weapon, including the elemental bonuses, I was trying to figure out the right word for that, to go up against the right enemy, and that's why it packs such a serious punch. And I figured y'all were gonna ask me for this build somewhere in the comments, so I might as well go ahead and slot it in. Regardless, let's get back to Past Rob. Alright, now as for Atlas's second ability, Tectonics, it pretty much remains unchanged. However, it does have a little bit of a synergy with Petrify. As you can see now, you can go ahead and Petrify Bulwark, and it'll actually gain increased movement speed, and it'll actually roll a little bit further, as you can see there. Supposedly, it also has bonus damage, but if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I don't think I've ever used it for damage. I think I use it more for the comedy of knocking enemies down and pretending that I'm bowling in Warframe. Why not? Alright, now Atlas's Petrify has actually gotten the largest facelift of the entire kit, as you can see there. Now, previous to this, Atlas's Petrify was a channeled ability that slowly petrified enemies over time, but here, as you can see, Atlas actually does a quick charge up, and then enemies are petrified instantly, which is absolutely amazing. Now, keep in mind, this does work at a 60-degree angle in front of him, and the range mods that you put on this do not affect the angle at which he can petrify enemies. However, it will push that angle further back. So it just becomes a larger pizza slice, but the angle at which the pizza slice is cut is still going to be the same. So this is not like Oberon's Renewal, which fans out larger. Instead, it stays the same. It just goes back further like that. I hope that makes sense. Petrified enemies are basically the same thing as Frost's frozen enemies. First and foremost, they cannot be inflicted status, so don't, keep that in mind when you're trying to make your builds around this. In addition to that, petrification cannot be refreshed until the enemy actually breaks out, so you'll need to wait for them to become mobile again in order to go ahead and be able to reapply the ability. Regardless, it's an amazing CC ability, as you can see, because enemies are pretty much held there helplessly. And Landslide, even though Landslide doesn't necessarily have the greatest range on it, after a couple combos, you can actually burst multiple enemies in a single shot. Just do be aware that this is working off line of sight, so you do need to make sure that you can see your enemies, otherwise the petrification won't stick. Alright, so Atlas's fourth ability really hasn't undergone very many changes. However, it has gotten a couple little bonuses, as you can see right here. basically upon cast, so at the very beginning of the cast, you will petrify all surrounding enemies when you are casting Rubblers, and basically it's actually pretty fucking amazing because of the fact that you are usually stuck in an animation there, and you don't really want anybody to attack you in the meantime, so it holds everybody down while your Rumblers pop on out. So now one of the things that I wanted to point out is how tanky these Rumblers are. They're going up against 20 level 155 Butchers, and they're still hanging in there quite well. However, if you notice that they're not, you can go ahead and cast Petrify for a full heal. Now, when DE mentioned this, they said that it would be a percentage heal based on the health, and I was looking at it like, hey, looks like it says in the UI that it's a 100% heal. So thanks for the full heal, DE. That is a great synergy right there. Now, I actually wanted to go ahead and point one thing out about this, is how tanky these guys actually are, because I didn't realize this when I actually first started to play with them, but these things are solid, and I mean, they're solid as a rock, I guess you would say, because they can take on 155 Bombards without flinching. Like, legitimately, the amount of damage they take is pretty menial. Like, if I took a Bombard rocket to the face, I would be out. But as you can see, these guys are taking, you know, rockets left, right, and center, and they're really not getting hurt that bad at all, if at all. Every single hit that they do seems to stagger enemies and knock them back a little bit. They've got this great, hilarious rock throw when enemies are too far away from them. Also, keep in mind, the more power strength you have in these Rumblers, the larger they will become. See that little rock throw? You saw that. It was hilarious. But yeah, the larger they become and the more range you put on them, the faster they become. In addition to that, oh, these jackasses. In addition to that, you can actually go ahead and recast them. Hold on, let me cast them first. And then petrify these guys. I swear to God, these Rumblers have taken less damage in this fight than I have, but you can recast them to make them deal damage in an area of effect. So definitely keep that in mind if the timer on them is running out. Just go ahead, recast them, explode them, and then go ahead and cast a fresh batch, and you should be all good. They're actually pretty freaking amazing on the MOT runs that I was doing earlier, as you'll be able to see from the footage. They were standing toe-to-toe in some really heated environments, so don't forget that they exist, especially because they leave little pellets of rubble behind for you. That sounds like I'm talking about poop. I'm not, but it's a bonus, so be glad. So as for my opinions and feedback for the rework, overall, it's pretty fucking amazing. I'm loving the Rubble mechanic. I'm loving the new Petrify. That is legitimately the star of the show for me. And I really realized when I was playing Atlas that this rework was fantastic when I was no longer solely building for landslide. Because legit, my old build, you know, it was just a landslide machine. That's the #1 thing that I relied on for everything. Enemies hitting you a lot. Oh, landslide into them, so you have that moment of invulnerability. Oh, enemies still hitting you? Just keep landsliding them, because legitimately, you're gonna stay invincible until they're dead. Hopefully. However, in this case, now we've got a little bit more focus on petrifying enemies, and that I absolutely love. So whether it's the petrify skill itself, or it's the rumblers, which, you know, I really didn't use that much before because I was so focused on just dashing around everywhere, but now I definitely see the worth in the rumblers, and because of the fact that you can petrify surrounding enemies while you're casting it, it almost kind of wants you to like landslide into a group of enemies, petrify those enemies, go ahead and hit them with another landslide while all of your rumblers are around knocking enemies all over the place. I absolutely love the new gameplay. However, if I was going to ask for anything, because as you guys know, Rob likes, you know, some OP when it comes to his skills. Not the crazy amount, like power creep, crazy OP, but just a little sprinkle of OPness, right? That always kind of improves everything. So if I was going to ask for anything, #1, I love the change that you made to decay, where it decays a little bit slower on the Rubble. However, can we have more delay as well? 3 seconds is a little bit tight. And at least my feeling on this is, you know, you run into a group of enemies, you petrify them, you knock them down, you get the big chunk of armor, and you're like, yes! And then, you know, you're running around in the plains, or you're waiting for another spawn, and while the decay really helps, you know, kind of mitigate how much armor you're losing if you got like maybe 3 more seconds on the start of that decay. It would be even better to kind of like allot for travel time, right? Because you're not always having enemies coming to you. Sometimes you got to go to the enemies. Or if you won't give me a flat 6-second delay, if you could maybe make the 3-second delay work with duration mods. So, you know, we could kind of put that delay off just a little bit, maybe not so much, because listen, 3 seconds, you would need like 200% duration to get it up to 6 seconds. So just give me a little leeway. And listen, while you're there, if you're making things affected by mods, maybe have the amount of armor and health that is replenished also be affected by power strength. Just a teensy tiny bit, that would be absolutely fantastic, because legitimately, you know, it'd be nice for those power strength users out there, maybe not like the crazy blind raid power users, but you know, the standard power users, to get a little bit of a benefit off of that. Listen, I like the OP-ness, okay? I'm gonna try to push that way just a little bit. Just a little bit. The other thing that I would like to ask for, and this is something that had actually occurred while I was, you know, doing some escalating missions, was when you die, all of your rubble is gone. And that's kind of like one of those things where I'm like, okay, listen, if you're giving me like 98% damage reduction, if you're giving me like 95 to 98% damage reduction, okay. It's a steep price to pay though. Maybe, you know, just lose half of the rubble when you go, or maybe just the rubble ticks down as you are dying. Something along those lines, because legit, it is very, very, very hard to recover after you've died and now you're fighting high level enemies, especially in places like Mott. Now, I understand not everybody is going to be doing extended survivals on Mott with Atlas, but, you know, throw a dog a bone here. The last little bit that I did want to kind of point out, and this isn't supposed to be a bash, because I love the rework. I actually think that they did a fantastic job. But the pickup radius of that rubble, is it like a penny? Because I could like walk right next to it and literally it will not like be picked up. I thought, and listen, I'm not advocating for universal vacuum, but you know, I thought that there was a 3-meter range on your personal vacuum. So I'm like scooting up to it to kind of like test it out to see exactly how far I was. Always scooting. I'm like, I literally have to put my foot right on top of this thing in order to pick up the rubble. And there's a lot of times where, you know, you'll landslide into an enemy and continue moving forward because, listen, I just put my fist in his face, right? I got up close and personal with that dude. You would think that I picked up the rubble. Sometimes you gotta run back and pick up that rubble because of the fact that you were not able to do it. Listen, I don't mind walking over to pick up something, but if you gotta walk over it a couple times to pick it up, I'm just little asks, nothing too crazy, because overall I have really genuinely enjoyed this Atlas rework update tweak. I'm gonna say, I feel like it's kind of like a rework, to be completely honest with you. That Rubble mechanic is absolutely fantastic. Just a few more tweaks to be had with it before he's like perfecto, you know what I mean? So I'm very curious, how do you guys feel about the rework? And one of the things that I do kind of want to point out for you guys out there, if you are at all frustrated with it because it's not quite working, really, honestly, truly remod. Just remod Atlas from scratch, relearn him, because he feels totally different to play now than he used to. And that's actually, to me, since most of the abilities are still the same, kind of ingenious, because you can tweak the way that a Warframe works almost completely based on just a couple changes to a couple abilities and maybe like a new mechanic tied in. So I'm loving it. Don't hesitate to play around with your own builds like I did with mine, because again, you know, I was a Path of Statues lover. Now I am converted into the Lord and Savior Petrified. But go ahead and leave your feelings down in the comments below. Are you guys enjoying it as much as I have? Have you had to remod him as much as I did? And that pretty much does it for me for now. So as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I'll chat with you guys next time. Bye-bye.